Good afternoon, and welcome to my YouTube channel. If you gain any value from this video, don't forget to subscribe, give me 2 thumbs up, and maybe share with a friend. So I have a few things that I wanted to chat with today, just trying to take it a little bit light. I've been trying to be so serious, and everybody misses me actually being comical. So I'm going to bring a little bit more of that in. I wanted to thank you again for your criticisms. They actually help me get better. I keep realizing that I keep making huge editing mistakes, and because you guys are failing forward with me, it helps me get better. So thank you so much for that. So the first thing I wanted to just talk about is the passing of Kirstie Alley and how heaven gained another angel today, especially when you are in the conservative camp. She was one of the very few conservative Hollywood voices and always really stood for that. I saw this amazing interview with her where she was saying the Democrats have plenty of people in Hollywood to speak for them. I'm going to speak to my people. So she was speaking to the conservatives out there, and she always really went against the grain even when it wasn't popular. And I just really, truly appreciate that. So she unfortunately lost a really silent battle with colon cancer. She hadn't told a lot of people that she was suffering from it. I just wanted to take a moment for her today. Moving into my next thing, obviously today we've got the Georgia runoff happening. What's my hot take on the Georgia runoff? Basically, due to polling not being extremely correct over the last couple of elections, I don't have a whole lot of faith in the polling system. So I don't have a whole lot of confidence in Herschel Walker actually winning this. And this isn't because I think he's a terrible candidate. I don't think he was the candidate all Republicans wanted, and evidenced by that, meaning that they didn't put a lot of money behind him. They actually pulled some money and put it into other candidates that really didn't end up mattering. So now this 50-50 split all rests on the back of Herschel Walker. Now, one could say that we're still crossing our fingers and hoping for the libertarian vote, and maybe that will be the boost that he needs to take this election. Hopefully that is the case. I'm not feeling super confident. And I'm going to give you a hot take that I believe that not a lot of people are talking about, but when he chose Lindsey Graham to lead the charge, or maybe Lindsey Graham chose to lead the charge, which would even make me more skeptical. Now, I'm not a Lindsey Graham fan. I believe if there really truly are rhinos in the government, Lindsey Graham is one of them. And just one of the reasons that I believe this was due to his bombshell he decided to drop right before the midterms about his federal abortion ban. Now, that being said, I am pro-life, but my pro-life stance is due to my faith, and I understand that there's a separation in church and state for a reason. They find a moral line in the sand that we can all be comfortable with. Just because my faith leads me to now have a pro-life stance, I did not always have that stance. But dropping a bomb like a federal abortion ban 2 weeks before an election was the most disgusting timing for a Republican. I believe that's the reason that we had the giant turnout for one-issue voting, and that was in the realm of abortion. Like, that was actually really low on the list, and then somehow it ended up being one of the deciding factors. And I think that was because of his little bombshell. That being said, him leading the charge for Herschel, I don't think looks great. I don't know who decided that he was going to be the one and be the voice, but I can tell you right now that turned me off. Every time the man comes on the TV, I'm like, ugh, Lindsey Graham. And that's who's leading the charge for Herschel. I just think that they could have found a bigger voice or a better voice. I mean, it would have been amazing if it were DeSantis. Maybe even Kemp taking a bigger stance would have been a more popular thing to do. But here we are. And the other thing that I think is really interesting is here it is, day of voting. And I just had this idea, like, don't hate the player, hate the game, right? A lot of the stuff they were doing is legal. So we need to get better at doing that. Rather than, now here we are, day of election again, and all the conservatives again waited till today so that what, all the machines could go down? Like, are we just giving them an open for this bull crap to happen again? I just feel like we should have been early voting, we should have been harvesting ballots, we should have been doing what they're doing legally to win these elections. And it seems that we did not even take a number from their book and give that a go. So, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Now, let's talk about August numbers when it came to COVID. It showed that more people actually died with COVID that were vaccinated than were not. So I think that was one of the first times, according to them, whether they fudged the numbers or not, we will actually never know. Why the continued push for everyone to continue getting these vaccines and get these boosters? if we're starting to see you can spread COVID, you can get COVID, doesn't keep you out of the hospital. It literally doesn't do any of the things that they said that this was going to do when they first put it out. Now, their narrative has just changed a little along the way. So now all the Dems are saying, well, we had to follow the science. Well, you had to follow the science so that now the science is showing that all of us conspiracy theorists that were saying from the beginning, you said we were fucking Looney Tunes. And now, lo and behold, the data is showing that we were in fact just a spoiler alert. So you're welcome. We will never, ever admit that. We have seen that with your, wasn't there like a vaccine like apology thing that went out there, like document saying, don't hate us for not knowing, we were all scared. Okay, Crimea River Dems and crazy people who pushed a narrative for people to get something that is actually more dangerous because the risks outweigh the benefits. That being said, in Florida, our Surgeon General just came right out and said, we do not recommend anyone from 18 to 39 years old to take this vaccine because the benefits do not outweigh the risks of myocarditis and blood clots. So thank goodness I live in a state that's actually promoting positive things. My next thing I wanted to kind of go into is meta statement, what it means and how it's linked to Twitter and Elon Musk. So basically, I've been saying all along that I think there's going to be a trickle down from Elon Musk restoring free speech to Twitter, the Twitter files coming out, understanding the government did have a hand in all of these social media platforms. I think that's going to have to trickle down, and it's going to kind of seep into whether it's Facebook, hopefully YouTube. I don't think TikTok matters because they're run by the CCP, so it doesn't matter. But some of these more American companies, I think we're going to start to see some changes in how they are run as well. And evidence by that, we actually had him come out. I'm going to read the actual statement. If Congress passes an all ill-considered journalism bill as part of a national security legislation, we will be forced to consider removing news from our platform altogether, rather than submit to government-mandated negotiations and unfairly disregard any value that we provide to news outlets through increased traffic and subscriptions. The Journalism Competition and Preservation Act fails to recognize the key fact. Publishers and broadcasters put their content on our platform themselves because it benefits their bottom line, not the other way around. No company should be forced to pay for content users don't want to see, and that's not a meaningful source of revenue. Put simply, the government creating a cartel-like entity which requires one private company to subsidize other private entities is a terrible precedent for all American businesses. So, that being said, they might pull news from Facebook or Meta, Facebook, whatever, due to the fact that if the government's going to try to regulate it, is it free speech? So isn't that exactly what Elon Musk is kind of saying? And I just believe that has to be a trickle down related to this, because otherwise I don't feel like maybe Zuckerberg would come out and actually say that. My next thing I want to chat about, and that is the government wanting to investigate Neuralink, and I believe they've investigated Tesla based on Elon Musk, because they don't want to tackle the whole Twitter files thing because that's been exposed. So they're just choosing to not even talk about that. I believe on ABC, NBC, and CBS, they have had 0 minutes devoted to even talking about this whatsoever. CNN has talked about it a little, but they're also like of this new camp where they're trying to be a little bit more centric, which is kind of a farce. But hey, kudos to them for giving it a go when some of the others are not even covering it whatsoever. And then Karine Jean-Pierre came right out and said, this is old news. It's just a distraction. A distraction from what? All the shit you guys are doing? No, it's a hey, let's focus on this because this is proof that you guys rigged the election. Not maybe stole the election. Would that have impacted enough of how people voted to change 2020? I do believe it would have, aside from all the other shenanigans that took place. But if I want to stay in the camp of let's just say that the results were actually true, this could have actually been enough people that would have been swayed had all of this completely come out. But they suppressed it. And their suppressing it definitely changed how people vote. I definitely believe that this falls under the camp of a rigged election. And more needs to be investigated for certain. Moving into Balenciaga, again, just a quick little recap on that and why it's still crickets in Hollywood. Why is nobody speaking up? I mean, a few people have spoken up, but very few. So in my concern is if you're not standing against it, then you're clearly for it. And if I were them, especially because I heard that the Epstein-Maxwell list is going to be coming out, they've said it needs to be made public, I would want to get on the other side of this thing, because if you're not standing against it, then you're for it. And what that means is, like, basically, if you're not willing to denounce what they are doing, then you clearly are okay with them sexualizing children. And I don't want, it's like, one part of me wants to see this list, but the other part of me knows I'm going to see a bunch of people on it that are going to break my heart. Maybe movies that shaped my life when I was a kid, things like that. And it's like, you're going to see people on this list that is literally going to change how we look at the entire Hollywood and government. Because I think it's going to be huge when we actually get this list. And if I were people, I would be denouncing Balenciaga to make sure that the media understands I do not stand for any of this bullshit that they are trying to put out and test the waters. They thought that we had normalized this type of stuff, and lo and behold, we have not. Even The View, when they tried to take a stance against it, I thought it was absolutely appalling, because they focused more on the idea that this came at just a really bad time, Balenciaga, because, by you guys doing this, and they're already calling the LGBTQ trans people groomers, and this kind of coming out just really looks bad for them, rather than just denouncing Balenciaga. But they're a bunch of dirty, nasty female trolls anyway. So Jason Aldean's wife, Brittany Aldean, is leading the charge when it comes to Balenciaga. She has stood up and said, I am getting rid of all my Balenciaga because I do not stand with a company that promotes the sexualizing of children. Now, this is coming on the tails of her being canceled and the whole country music industry just simply for having a pro-life stance. She was like, all these people came, Maren Morris, all these people just came against her and tried to cancel her in the country music scene, which probably had, a little bit of an impact on Jason Aldean as well. If he had a big pair of steel balls, he would come up and stand up for his wife, because that's what he should have done. I don't know if he really stood up for her as much as he should have. But that being said, thank you, Brittany Aldean, for leading the charge when it comes to standing up against Balenciaga. You are awesome. All right, next point I wanted to talk about is LA is going to ban drilling, but it's promoting importing more oil from Venezuela. So somebody help me make sense of this, because this is the part of their, Green New Deal narrative that they push down our throats on the regular and use as a fear-mongering tactic for the less educated social justice warriors of this world, where they're constantly trying to push this, we're going to, more drilling in Venezuela so we can hopefully lessen the price of oil here. But how does that fit with your narrative? Because their oil is dirty as fuck. And then at least if we were to be doing this in the United States, it would be much cleaner oil. But they're trying to say, well, science says that it's actually better for the environment if we drill over there, drill their dirty oil, then pay a buttload of money for them to get it to our country. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Literally nothing about that makes sense. And I just feel like this is why I get so furious when the liberal left tries to push their climate change agendas and Green New Deals and everything, because in the same breath they will say something that would be completely contradicted by another thing that they supposedly push. And it's just the hypocrisy. I do not understand how these people don't see it. They just make themselves look so ignorant when they make these statements. I care so much about the environment and the animals, but I want to put windmills in the ocean and destroy the lobster fishing, kill fish, kill birds out of the air, but I care so much about the environment. Yeah, I don't think you even understand what goes into building one of those wind turbines and how terrible it is for the environment just to produce one of them. But God forbid they actually research that. That is not trending. What is trending is them being a social justice warrior. I digress. Clearly, I get pissed off thinking about those types of things. The protests in China. What does that mean for us here in the United States? Well, the way I look at it, and I kind of talked about this in my podcast, is these people are protesting knowing that they might be imprisoned, executed. It's going to be a pretty detrimental thing that's going to happen to them for standing up and saying no more fucking COVID lockdowns. We're done. You've welded us into our homes. This is draconian. This is absolutely crazy. Now, over here in the United States, why are we hearing crickets on the White House stage? Why are they not condemning this? Well, because if it were up to them, we would have gone through similar measures. If it weren't for we the people standing up and standing against these things, we probably would have undergone similar shutdowns and similar lockdowns and similar draconian measures. I mean, even Fauci is kind of like, supported what China did. So, everybody knows he's the highest paid unvoted for government official that we have. And if it were up to him, we would have been far more locked down than we actually were. So it's almost like for them to condemn those practices and what's going on would be almost like admitting our own guilt in the fact that we did some kind of draconian things here as well. Some states obviously more than others. I thank goodness live in Florida, one of the most free states. But if you lived in New York or California, I mean, they still are. I mean, I believe California wants to bring the mask mandate back. I think they probably have, vaccine mandates there. So there is much more draconian measures happening in a lot of different cities in states across the country. So that being said, it's fairly difficult to condemn something that if it were up to certain leaders in this country, we would probably be doing it here. So that's why we're hearing crickets from the Biden administration. Now, I kind of wanted to chat about my hot take about what I believe that the Republicans should focus on over the next 2 years. So in no particular order: inflation, energy independence, the border, fentanyl, epidemic, the crime, and in the background, the Biden laptop and the origins of COVID. Now, it's not that I don't think that the Biden laptop and the origins of COVID are extremely important. I think those things need to be brought to light, but they need to be done in the background, not the main focus, or we're no different than the last 2 years that the Biden administration has basically made their main focus January 6th and Donald Trump. We can't then take a page from their book and do the exact same thing. We need to be focusing in the forefront on inflation, the things that are robbing the Americans of a happy life, the life we had in 2018, 2019, prior to this administration taking over. We need to undo some of these things that they've done. We need to be worrying about inflation. We need to worry about the fentanyl that is killing our children, that is flooding over this border. And we could be putting a stop to some of that fentanyl that is happening in the United States and these deaths that are happening if we focused more on the border. Now, that is happening. I know MacArthur went to the border and he's trying to place a big spotlight on what's going on there. And I do think that that is going to matter. And then we've got Rand Paul, who is kind of coming against Fauci, the origins of COVID, whether they took some royalties. Fauci's basically saying, I don't have to disclose that. None of us have to disclose that. Well, the American people say, yeah, you do have to disclose that, because if you disclose that, then we can understand why you were pushing something that was actually killing people. Maybe that's, your globalist New World Order kind of idea. But some people, at the end of the day, let's just be honest, it wasn't American lives that they cared about. It was padding their own pockets. So that being said, of course, there's some people that would have come out and said, promoted vaccines. I mean, even on the small scale, you look at some of these like doctors, nurses, things like that. They got $10 a pop every time they put a vaccine in an arm. So before you know it, whether they know that there are, terrible side effects to this or not, they're keeping that from the public because they need their $10. Green talks. Money talks. It always comes down to money. It is not about American lives. And I think that they've shown that. Crime, obviously, crime is escalated everywhere. But due to the fact that in a lot of these soft on crime cities, you're seeing an escalation of it there. And even some of them are even starting to come out and kind of spotlight it and say this needs to stop. But it just needs to be more of a focus. And Republicans, you can't run on the fact that we need to take care of crime and not actually put forth something that is going to hopefully eliminate some of the crime. I understand they're going to be going against, these kind of liberal governors, liberal, people running certain states, but they need to attempt it. They need to make it look like they are trying to attempt to control the crime. They need to put a plan into action. Like, nothing's going to happen without a plan. Energy independence, I kind of already chatted about that a little bit when it came to, what's going on. But we just need to get back to that place where we are exporting as much as we're importing. And that will hopefully help lower the price at the pump. And maybe we can actually put some oil back into our strategic oil reserves that they have absolutely eliminated. And that is supposed to be for, emergency measures. Like, what's going to happen if, God forbid, there actually is a nuclear war or some, World War III? Like, we're going to have very low amounts in our strategic oil reserve. And it's designated for emergencies such as that. And he used it to lower gas prices just to hopefully sway a midterm election. It's disgusting. It's disgusting that the things that they do to try to win. And it just seems more and more to me like they care very little about the actual American people, and they just care about power and money, The Biden laptop, origins of COVID. Again, like I said, we do need to concentrate on this. I just want them to hopefully have these be like the stories running in the background. How we always have our apps that are running in the background of our phone. That needs to be happening. But I think they need to be really making the Main Street push about all the things that are actually going to impact your normal American person. So that people are like, okay, they're just doing the same damn thing that the Democrats did for the last 2 years. People are tired of that crap. They're tired of the personal witch hunts. They're tired of all of that. They just want to live the life that they lived when they were a little bit more carefree with their money. So I think it definitely, at least when it comes to the media, really focusing that that's where their primary focuses are, is going to be the most beneficial way that the Republicans can hopefully determine that we will take a Republican president for 24. But because if they do absolutely nothing that anyone gives a flying fuck about in the next 2 years, we can kiss the 24 presidency goodbye. Because I think people get in this place where they're just like comfortable. It's almost like, well, this is the shit that I know rather than the shit that I don't know. So then they'll end up voting for Biden again, who will be like 80 flipping years old, like the oldest president in history. But he will stand a chance of getting back in there. And that's also going to be really important in who our Republican candidate is, whether you're a Trump fan or not a Trump fan. I think this man just needs to fire whoever is doing his marketing, because I love Trump. I'm a Trump supporter. I've stood behind him, but he's making it really flipping difficult to stand behind him right now with some of the things that he's coming out with. And I know he just wants to be him and he wants to say what he wants to say, but he needs to start listening to someone, because he's just pushing more and more people away. Even his supporters are starting to say, okay, even we are starting to think we need somebody else. So, and for me to start thinking that scares me, because I'm kind of a very hardcore Trump supporter. So that being said, if I'm of the camp that I'm starting to think, oh my gosh, now I do really, support DeSantis over Trump. If my brain is even flip-flopping to that place, then I know I'm not the only one. So somebody control this man, even if it's just reeling in some of his comments like eliminating the Constitution. Come on, bro. And whoever allowed that dinner to happen that didn't step in and say, Nick Fuentes, not going to be good for your reputation, bro. Let's squash this shit before it happens. I just want to end on a really funny note. So, first of all, don't know who fucking Doja Cat is. I could care two shits about Doja Cat. But Doja Cat apparently changed her name to Christmas, but then asked Elon Musk if she could only have it for a short period of time, and she wanted to change her name back, and he said okay. So she changed it to Elon Musk, which we already know how that worked out for Kathy Griffin. So he took it upon himself to decide to change her name for her. Guess what this VIP best troll, literally he is the king of all trolls, changed Doja Cat's name to? Man of my own heart, he changed her name to Fart. And yes, I went and checked for myself, and Doja Cat's name is in fact Fart on Twitter. So that is amazing. Well, guys, as always, if you did gain any value from this video, I will again remind you, give me a subscribe, 2 thumbs up, share with a friend. Anything that helps me build this platform is greatly appreciated. As always, you could have been doing anything you wanted right now. Maybe you tuned into my video and spent a few minutes with me, and that is greatly appreciated. So thank you so much. Let's continue to grow together. Freedom fighters, thank you so much. Just remember, it is all happening. You guys are awesome. See you when I see ya.